If you have been trying to conceive for months or maybe years by this point, do you often feel like your baby is so close? You can sense that they're around you, but you just have no idea how to bring them home. Well, in today's episode, I am chatting with a very special guest about spirit babies and how connecting with yours can actually help you fall pregnant. That's all coming up next on Your Journey to Fertility. Welcome to Your Journey to Fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Welcome back to Your Journey to Fertility. I'm so excited to have you here with me today because we are going full woo on this episode. We're talking about one of my favorite topics in the world of fertility, and that is spirit babies and how connecting with yours can actually bring you closer to that positive pregnancy test. But getting onto the level of your spirit baby is about so much more than just falling pregnant. It's about learning to trust your intuition, having faith in your own capabilities, and being able to start enjoying your life again as you're trying to conceive. Because when you do, you know that it is only a matter of time before your baby is here. If you followed me for a while, you'll know that I definitely wasn't always into this kind of woo-woo side of things. I have an exercise science background, and I always followed this idea of working hard would just help me achieve and get what I wanted. But as we all know, it just doesn't work that way when it comes to infertility. When I was trying for my second baby, which was a much longer and much more difficult journey than the first, I was introduced to a spirit baby medium. And look, I just thought, what is this? I've never heard of anything like this before. But, I thought, what have I got to lose? I will give it a go. So I tried to be as open-minded as I could. And I did this session with this incredible woman who was a medium. And she told me about this little boy who was so excited to come into my family and to my world. She described his hair color, his eye color, and his little personality. And it just gave me this sense of knowing, kind of reassured me that my baby was on the way. I didn't think that much about the exact details of what she told me during that session, but I ended up falling pregnant about 5 or 6 months after that conversation. And when my little boy was born, he was exactly the way she described, down to a T. And I can't explain that in any way other than the magic that is this kind of work and these incredible people that are able to bring it to us. So my guest today is Nancy Weiss. Nancy is a Reiki master, a psychic medium, a hypnosis practitioner, and a spiritual coach specializing in spirit babies and personal growth. She helps women connect with the souls of their babies before pregnancy and guides them to trusting their intuition and their spiritual connection on their motherhood journey. Her own experience of becoming a first-time mother at the age of 42 via embryo adoption and communicating with her daughter before pregnancy was the catalyst to start sharing this sacred work with others. I can't wait to dive into this episode. So let's go. Here is Nancy. Nancy, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Thanks for giving us your time and sharing all of the amazing knowledge and wisdom that you're about to go through with us today. How are you doing?
I am doing fabulous, and I'm so excited to be here and really talk about my passion with everyone. So yeah, let's do it.
It's going to be a big conversation. So can we start with learning a little bit about you? What is the work that you do and why do you do it?
Sure. I am a spirit baby psychic medium. I'm an energy healer. I'm a hypnosis practitioner. And my focus is really connecting women and helping them connect with their spirit baby. And if you don't know what a spirit baby is, it might be a new concept to you, but a spirit baby is the soul of our unborn child that is waiting to be born. That's the easiest and simplest way to say it. This is before conception, before pregnancy, literally the soul that is waiting to enter that human vessel and then be born to their parents. And so this work, I've been doing it for about 7 years or 8 years, I think, professionally now. But spirit babies, I've always connected with them my whole life. And it wasn't really until my fertility journey that I then realized, wow, I can connect with my spirit baby. And then I knew I had to tell everyone else about it too.
Can you talk a little bit about your own personal journey? Because I find that so many of us that work in this space have had their own journey with infertility and their own challenges. And I think yours is quite unique in the way that it all came together. So I would love for you to share that.
Sure, it is. Yeah, so my husband and I got married in 2015. I think, yeah, I forget my dates, but we got married in 2015. And I think we were 40 at that point. So I didn't get married until my second marriage. I didn't get married until I was in my 40s. We met when we were 39. And so here we are, both of us did not have children beforehand. And I was on the fast track of like, whoa, we really, we need to get this done. We need to get this started and going. And what's funny is that I had become a coach, a holistic health coach, not that before, after. And I started trying to figure out where I was going to focus my practice on. And then we started working with IVF, me and my husband, because I kind of didn't want to keep trying naturally. We tried for a year and I didn't want to keep doing that. I kind of just wanted to make the magic happen ASAP. And so that kind of led me to going and becoming a fertility coach and then a spiritual fertility coach, because I first started talking about, like having your supplements and eating your vitamins and getting rid of plastics and doing movement and all of those things. And then I realized that there's more to it than just those things. And I used to tell my clients, or my followers, say, look, you can eat all the broccoli in the world, but if you don't believe you're going to be a mom, that's a real disconnect. And so I wanted to really start to bring that mindset and the spirituality to fertility, because it really helps foster that trust, that hope, that faith that your baby is coming. And so as we were going through IVF, I was also coach at this time. So I didn't have children yet, but was coaching and, having client sessions. And I heard about spirit babies from someone else. It came up in the book. I think somebody posted a book, Spirit Babies by Walter McKitchen. And I was like, how did I not realize this concept? And then I kind of thought, like, my whole life I had been connecting, I'd been psychic and mediumship and connecting with children specifically. And it's like everything came around, like it made full circle. Now here I am. And I was like, this is what I need to focus on. And so first I did it for myself and I started focusing on connecting with my spirit baby. This is before I knew how I would get pregnant, when I would get pregnant. I had multiple failed IVFs at that point and egg retrievals. And I just knew that this was something that I had to add to my toolbox. And so I started connecting with my first daughter, Luna, I think 6 months before I even knew how she would come to us.
Wow. That is such a crazy journey. And so, what happened then? How did you end up bringing your children earthside?
So after many rounds of IVF with me and my husband, it wasn't working for us. And it was hard. It really was, I'm sure listeners, if you've been through it, you know how difficult it is to, to have an egg retrieval and not get enough embryo, not to get enough eggs, let alone to get enough embryos. And so we kept trying. And I actually wound up talking to a friend of mine who had twins. She was a nurse. And she was asking me like what my next step was going to be. And I wasn't 100% sure. And then she said to me, she just in passing kind of said, like, yeah, we still have 5 embryos left. She's like, but I'm not really sure. I'm like, after the twins, if I could really do any more kids after that. And I said, wow, I said, oh, so what are you going to do? And she said, well, she's like, they're frozen, but did you know that people donate them? And I said, what do you mean people donate them? She says, oh yeah, people donate them to like people like you. And this just was, again, I had been in the business, in the fertility business for a while, but embryo adoption or embryo donation was not something that was really being talked about 6 years ago. It was a little bit on the down low. It was a little bit quiet. And when I heard about this, it just lit me up inside. I had this feeling like, wow, this sounds incredible. My husband is adopted from birth. I told him, he loved it. And we just knew that we had to find out more about it. And so the next time when we had our follow up after our failed IVF, I asked our doctor, does the clinic do embryo adoption? And of course, they're like, oh, yes, we do. And I was like, well, how come no one told me about this before? And I'm not sure, ladies, if it's available in Australia. Jen, do you know if you have that
It is,
there?
it is, but the process is a lot more complicated than it is in the US.
Okay. This was definitely the easiest thing I've ever done. It was inexpensive, I will say, compared to things like egg donor, which was $20,000 to do egg donor. This was $1,500 for us, which just doesn't even make any sense. I'm like, of course they didn't want to tell me about it. We then, kind of put in our application. We had to go through a couple of things like meeting with a psychologist to talk about this, our who we are and our ideas and what we wanted to do and what it would be like to raise a child like that and just general things. And they said that they would send us a few profiles and it would take months. And then all of a sudden, in a week after our application, we got the profiles. And she was like, hey, I think you're really going to like this profile. And we read it, just like if anyone has done egg donation or sperm donation, you can kind of look and see they answer questions about their personality and things like that, their physical traits. And we went for it. And we had our first baby in 2017. That's my first daughter, Luna. And she was frozen for 13 years.
It's not wild. Science is wild.
It really, really is. So she was frozen for 13 years before she was transferred, before I had my transfer. And then I wasn't even a week pregnant yet. Like I was a week. We got that first beta. We were into that first week at the end of the week, checking our levels and everything. And I get a call from the coordinator saying, hey, we have one more embryo in that sibling group. Do you want it? And I was like, oh my goodness. Yes. I'm here. I'm not even like pregnant a week. And they're like, do you want the second embryo? And so we said yes. And my second daughter, Ayla, was frozen at that point for 15 years before she was transferred. Because, of course, I needed to have baby number one first and kind of do that. And she was born in the beginning of 2020.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your story, Nancy. I think, and when we are talking about spirit babies, people, I find in my experience, they associate it so much with their life and their body and their genetics. And I think it's important to share your story because it can be any way that your baby comes to you. I think that's a really beautiful story. And thank you for sharing that. So,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit more about this idea of spirit babies, though? So, you mentioned before that it is the soul of a baby that is waiting to come into this world. So, how do you connect with them? How do you know that they're there? What are they there to tell you?
So I think this is just as unique as we are here. Our spirit babies are unique as well. They all have their different way of communicating with you. They have their different way of, having that relationship with you. And I think one of the biggest things is that, and I think my children, Luna and Ayla, were completely opposite spirit babies. completely opposite. Where Luna was the very talkative one, like I could literally hear her intuitively, I could see her, where she just like had her hand on her hips and she was a big deal on the other side. And she would like yell at me like what her middle name was. And I'm like, she was so sassy. And then you had Ayla, who I found it really tricky to communicate with. She was more of this kind of ethereal, kind of just energy that didn't have this one on one conversation with me. And so they can be a little bit harder to communicate with. And I, even at that point, I was connecting with my other spirit baby colleagues to have sessions with me because I was like, why can't I connect with her? And so I just want to put that out there that sometimes it's going to be very different and it takes trust. And it's like a muscle to develop your intuition. This is about intuition. This is about hearing that whisper, that little whisper, that voice, those messages, paying attention to the signs as you start to talk to your baby. And it takes some time. Sometimes women connect quickly, but sometimes it is just like a practice, just like in a meditation, where it takes time to quiet down the mind, called the monkey mind. Sometimes people call it, of the day-to-day craziness, and actually hear the intuition and actually tap in. And so I find a meditation or a visualization or being walked through a visualization the first time and seeing in your mind's eye that baby and then starting to connect with them. And then you start the communication, maybe asking them to send you their name, maybe asking them to send you a specific sign. I know I had a client to show me a yellow Jeep. Like she really wanted things to be it wasn't just like show me a feather or a penny or a butterfly. She wanted very specific signs. I had another client, pine cones were very specific. So it's a process of getting into this groove of exercising the intuition, exercising the third eye, and starting to really trust what you receive.
Mm, mm. So why are these spirits here? Like, what are they trying to tell you? What is their reason for communicating?
Well, I think if you choose to communicate with them, they are surrounding moms wanting to come through, right? Everybody has spirit babies around them. There are going to be some spirit babies that are going to come through in this lifetime as children. There are some spirit babies that may be hanging around you that just kind of like your energy or want to be around you, but actually don't come in this lifetime. Or maybe they were with you in a past life. So you have those things, but you're really a beacon for that child that wants to come in. That you're saying, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to be a mom. I'm calling in that soul that wants me to be wants to be with me and come through Earthside. And when they see that, they go, okay, that's my mom. I want to, that's my mom and dad. I want to make that entrance with them.
Mm.
So I think it's part of maybe not so much as what they want to say to us, but it's forming the relationship before conception or
Mm.
even adoption. That also, it's not just for regular pregnancy, but it can be for adoption as well.
Mm. And do you find that when you are in a session with a client, so they've come to you because they are wanting to connect with their spirit baby or they're not sure if they have a spirit baby. So what kind of messages are you then able to translate for those people?
Yeah. So during my sessions, I'm doing a type of energy healing as well. So I'm picking up it's not just a spirit baby session, but it's also what is going on with the mom. What is the energy? What are the things that are holding her back? What are the things that she can kind of improve on? What does she need to give attention to? And then I'm meeting their spirit baby. So I'll see their spirit baby. Like today, I had a beautiful session, and that baby showed herself as about 3 years old. She showed me her name. She showed me how she was reacting with mom and that she was ready to come through.
Mm.
She also had a baby boy spirit, a spirit baby boy, but he just showed himself as a point of light, almost like not ready to make that full transition yet. and a little further ahead in years, about 3 years away from now. So that's how I saw the both of them. And that's how they'll come through. And so I'll let my client know, like, I have a spirit baby boy or a spirit baby girl. They're showing me their name is Josephine. They have, blonde hair, blue eyes. They're very playful. And sometimes spirit babies have messages too. One of the recent ones that my client told me, she has two little boys now, and she was talking about her session with me a few years ago. And her spirit boy, baby boy, had said, Mom is scared, but I'm not. And it was this great thing that she had to kind of be like, okay, I'm not scared to bring this baby in, and try to work through the things that she needed to work through to bring her children in. So the messages and the communication is all very different. Again, just like our own personalities.
Mm. And so are these spirits something that, like, if you're walking around day to day, can you just see them everywhere? Or do you have to sit and channel them when you're with a person particularly?
For me, I worked on channeling when I'm in session, because if I were to be aware of all the spirits, because not only do I have children, I also bring in passed on loved ones, which I try to tell them, like, listen, you're just here to watch, but a lot of times they'll show that they're with that baby or a baby that has been lost in pregnancy. So I make sure that I'm on in session and I'm off when I'm out of session, because that can be really exhausting for me to be in that open, receptive state all the time. I just can't do that. But there are times where, I'll see somebody that's pregnant, and I'll be like, oh, she's having a boy, or certain things like that. I'm like, just mind your own business. So, but yeah, I have to make sure that I don't have myself on all the time.
Hmm. So you mentioned previous losses. Can you talk a little bit about these little souls that only come into the world for a very short amount of time? Maybe they are lost in early pregnancy, maybe they're stillborn or in later pregnancy. What what reason is there for that from a spiritual perspective?
I just did an incredible podcast this morning about this very subject, about miscarriage and termination and what that is on in the spirit realm. And there's so many different reasons for loss, and a soul choosing to leave that body at a certain time. Whether it is they're testing things out for the first time as in that human form, or like, you know what, I'm going to test this out, see what this feels like. I'm going to test this out, give mom a chance to see what this feels like. There's birth order. There's things where, hey, I don't want to be the first child. I don't want to be a girl this time. I don't want to have siblings, or I want lots of siblings. And there's all these different reasons. Maybe mom is not with the right partner right now. And they're like, you know what? This is not the choice I want to make. There's an entire, what we can even fathom, an entire thing being everything being orchestrated on the other side, because all this stuff is like planned out for us, who we're meant to be with, the soul contracts that we have, just like we chose our parents for very specific reasons. We chose our parents, our nationality, the day the day we're born, and how much money we have, and all of these things. So there's so much going on the other side when a child chooses to come in. And sometimes it's not the right time. And we have scientific studies on it, of how these children come, saying like, hey, remember I, came through and I lost you. I needed to try again. We actually have information about that. There's books about it. So it's pretty amazing. But I think knowing about this divine timing and this greater story that's going on behind the scenes is really important to remember.
Which is so hard to get your head around, and all you want is your baby in your arms. That is such a hard concept. But I find that this kind of work is reassuring in a lot of ways as well. Yeah. Do you find that the spirit babies that you connect with are souls of previous losses, or are they souls from a previous lifetime or past ancestors that have moved on? How do the souls work exactly?
So I believe in reincarnation. I believe in past lives. I believe that you can one time be your mom and then the next time you're your sister, your sister's sister and things like that. So I believe in all that. What I do try to do in my sessions though is to make sure that we're having babies that want to come in this lifetime, and so I don't get things like, hey, I was your brother beforehand. I don't really get that type of information because it's not what's needed, right? If we wanted to do a separate session where we wanted to dig into past lives and things like that, we can do that. But right now, it's all about bringing your baby in.
Mm,
We don't care what happened in a past life. We just want to know what's happening now. So I think that that's who comes through in those sessions.
yeah.
Is it ancestors? No, I don't see it as being ancestors. That's a separate thing. So these babies are often, I want to call them just, I'm going to say like fresh souls, some of them. There's different kinds of spirit babies. That's getting into a whole other podcast. Star seeds and earth babies and all this stuff. But I think that answered the question because I can go off into many different many different stories.
No, no, that's perfect. So, if someone is wanting to connect with their spirit baby, if this is something that is resonating with people, maybe it's not something they've believed in or been aware of before, but they think, I feel like there is someone there and I want to connect with them. How can we start to do that?
I think, and here's the one thing I want to say is that I think a lot of women, even if they don't know about this concept, they kind of know who's coming.
Mm,
They'll say, like, I knew I was having a girl. I knew I was having a boy. And it is that mother's intuition. And that is something that more women need to trust. They need to trust that. So when they feel those things, that's when you're really kind of connecting. That's when you're starting to connect. So sitting down quietly, meditating, asking that child to come to you, doing a visualization like I have, or hypnosis, and starting to just get quiet and say, hey, show me who you are. What's your name? And I think it's just getting the mind quiet. This is the biggest thing because people say, I'm asking, but I don't hear anything. But have you quieted down where you're in this kind of like meditative or not trance-like, but this state where you can actually receive the information? Once you do, and once you start working on this, you're working on your intuition, you're working on all these things, it then becomes easier to connect. And here you are shopping at a store, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a sign from my baby. You know what I mean? So it gets easier and easier. But again, if you're not working on your intuition, it's going to be take you a little bit more time. So this is about trust and exercising the muscle.
mm. And it is about practice. And I think that something like meditation is, we expect that we can all just meditate. I get so many students that come to me and say, I can't turn my mind off. I can't sit still. And that's because it is a practice. I mean, you wouldn't go to the gym once and then expect to lift the heaviest weight or to run the fastest 10Ks. So it is something that we need to allow time for and space for within our lives. So I think that is a really good point that your intuition is something you need to practice as well. You mentioned before one of your clients that had asked for a sign. So, is that something that you can do to connect with your spirit baby? And how do we ask them for signs?
I think that is one of the easiest way to connect with spirit is to ask for signs to start off with, because you're like, I'm not psychic. I can't hear what they're saying. I can't see them. But asking for a sign, spirit loves to send signs, whether it's a spirit baby or a passed on loved one. People see cardinals or dimes or interesting things in different places. And it is as simple as closing your eyes, maybe putting your hands on your chest, taking a few deep breaths, connecting with that spirit baby and saying, I would love to see a sign from you. I would love to see your name. Like maybe you gave that child a name already, and please show me your name somewhere, or show me a white feather, or whatever it is that might be symbolic for you. And then waiting for that sign. And it's like all of a sudden, when you least expect it, you're like, oh my goodness, I'll never believe this. Like my client with the pine cones, she's in California and she went to a beach wedding. Now, that's a beach wedding, shells, water. Well, what do you know? There were pine cones on the table, on each table. And she sent me pictures, and I'll never forget. I was like, oh my goodness. But it was just amazing. She was just like, he's literally sending me the signs in the, and that's, I think, the thing too, like in the oddest of places,
Mm.
when you least expect it. And I think that that's what really gets you to start like just exploring it and really believing in it and seeing it, because you're just like, okay, why are there pine cones at a beach wedding? So coming up with your own little sign of something that feels good to you is a great way to start, because you're also putting the responsibility on the spirit instead of yourself. And I
Mm.
think that that's a great way to build trust. Again, if you're not feeling like super psychic and intuitive, it's a great way to build trust.
That is such a good point, and it does take that pressure off you as well, doesn't it? So if you are a person that is doing this, you're allowing that time, you're honing your intuition, you're feeling all these signs and seeing all these symbols, but it's just not happening. How can we help to bring our baby earthside? And why does it not, quote unquote, work when you want it to work?
Yeah, the divine timing and the timing again that's just happening in the background is far more complex and pre-planned than we even know. I think about, I had my first baby at 42 and my second baby at 45. Is that something I wanted? No. I assumed that I would be maybe a first time mom in my 30s. And here I was waiting and waiting and waiting. I didn't even have a partner at one for a large portion of that time. So I really was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be a mom. And little do I realize that my babies had been frozen for, let's say, 12 years, 13 years at that point. I had not even met my husband yet. And we get married. And I think it was shortly before that we decide to move from, if you're in the States, from New Jersey to Georgia, which is north to south. And that was a very odd move for us because there was no reason for us to move to Georgia. We were just like, it's cheaper there, it'll be fun. We had no kids, we were just like, let's just go live. And that's where my babies were waiting for 12 years, for 13 years, the same amount of time that my husband was in Ohio, but I had not met him yet. So we hadn't even met, but the babies were being made and pre planned. And when I think about this, when you think about that, there's so much orchestration. And the more you connect, it really builds that faith, that hope, that trust. It changes your mindset. And here's the thing, every time you tell your body something positive, the body responds. Even if it's not true, even if it's something that we're like, I don't know if this is true yet. But the more you tell yourself, my soul, my body is ready, I'm ready to be a mom, the body listens and it starts to all fall into place.
Mm.
That's my take on it.
It's mind blowing, isn't it? When you start to trace it back like that. And, I think so many of us in this position would love to say exactly that. I didn't want to be a first time mum when I was this age. And, my plan was this and it didn't work out. But, you look at your life years later and when your children are with you and you wouldn't imagine it happening any other way. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, as hard as that is. And I think the timing of the whole journey was the hardest thing for me to get my head around. I had my plan and I wanted my two kids under two and I wanted it to happen now. And, it just doesn't work that way. But look at the stories and the journey and the life that you can create when the journey unfolds in the way that it's meant to. Oh, I know. It's a lot. Nancy, this is so eye-opening and so inspiring. Thank you. Is there any advice you would like to give to women who are still on their journey of bringing their baby home?
I think this blending of all the things that you can do of taking care of your body, whether it's the exercising and doing and keep saying exercising, but doing all the different things, but blending the spirituality into it, I think is just really a next level thing, because it helps your mindset, and mindset is key here. That mindset, the way I believed, there was no doubt that I wouldn't be pregnant. There was no doubt that I wouldn't have this baby. You know what I mean? And I did things to create space and make space for them. Like I posted, like, I bought a 5 foot teddy bear for my daughter, but that was months and months before I was even pregnant or even knew how. And I put that teddy bear in the room across from my bedroom, which was going to be her room. And I always looked at it and I always made sure that that's what was going to happen. So the more you train yourself to this, for this belief, the more you make space and create space for your baby in a physical way, an emotional way, in a spiritual way, it then becomes this thing where it's as true as the sky is blue. And there is no changing it, because you just know. But it takes some time to build that mindset and that faith and that hope. And I tell women, don't give up. Don't give up, because if you want to be a mom, you will figure out a way to make it happen. Everything will work out. It's just having that faith that it will. And I think it's important to trust your intuition and do what you need to do to create your family. You know what I mean? I think it's important to trust, you know, if you want to go the IVF route, if you want to do those things. And I think the more that you do connect with your intuition, those decisions become easier. They become easier to say, you know what? I want to try naturally for another year. I want to do this, because you could feel in your body that it feels good, and you're making decisions without fear-based decisions. Instead of, you're making decisions that you feel really good about, and you trust yourself. And I think when you do that, magic happens.
That's such beautiful advice, because you're right. You can do everything perfectly. You can take all the right supplements and have this perfect diet and do everything that your doctor says. But I feel like everything that you've spoken about, this leaning into that trust and your capability and knowing that what you want is on its way, is a really big missing piece of the equation here. And it is not to be underestimated. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you have today, Nancy. If people want to learn more about you, get in contact with you, book in a session with you to connect with their spirit baby, what is the best way for people to find you?
Instagram is my favorite place. So I'm at Nancy Weiss Intuitive. So I have all my links there. And I also have on YouTube a podcast called Coffee with Spirit. It's got my New York accent in it. Coffee, Cawfee. That's how we say it up north. So my Coffee with Spirit podcast, which I started recently. And like I said, I put out one a week. It comes out on Tuesdays, and I've talked about, what it's like on the other side, and spirit babies and miscarriage, and just all these things that I think it's helpful to have support around and kind of hear a spiritual perspective. It's very, my goal is to really give that comfort and peace to women. So yeah, Nancy Weiss Intuitive on Instagram, and I would be so happy to see anybody. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll make sure that we add a link to all of those in the show notes. Nancy, thank you so much again for your time. And I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. It still gives me chills thinking about my experiences with spirit babies, and I hope that you got so much out of this conversation as well. On the next episode, we're going to continue leaning into this more woo-woo side of things as we chat to one of my favorite people about another big topic, using manifestation on your fertility journey. My guest will be sharing her step-by-step guide that you need to know in order to stop putting your life on hold and to finally bring your baby home. So until then, I'm sending you all my love as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.